Welcome to episode 8 of the Snobcast. Today we are discussing Melancholia. As always, this conversation will contain spoilers. We'll be discussing this movie from beginning to end.
I signed the deed for us yesterday, and I didn't want to tell you.
Here.
No, you should have it. I want you to have it with you all the time, and hold on to it, so you can look at it once in a while.
I'll always keep it with me.
Maybe we can have a little swing hanging from one of the trees.
Alright, welcome to the Snobcast. I'm here today with David.
Hey.
Joseph.
Hey.
And Steve.
Hey. I would like to start calling this movie Melancholia because it is a blight on our brains, which I like to call melons.
Yikes.
Oh, wow.
Melancholia.
Wow, you really thought of this.
So we watched Melancholia because we're coming up on the end of the world, and that's what this movie's about.
At least superficially.
Yeah.
But Melancholia is ultimately not about trying to capitalize on rumors of a Planet X coming here. It ultimately is about depression, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a universal agreement that that's basically what the movie's about? I mean, after you watch something like Melancholia, audiences would ask themselves, "All right, what did I just watch? What was this? What was the point of this whole thing? What is this movie trying to make physical for me to understand?" And ultimately, depression. Right?
That and shoe buffers. Definitely shoe buffers.
Shoe buffers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the movie is definitely really symbolic.
It operates almost entirely symbolically, right? Like even the characters aren't necessarily real people. They kind of operate on ideas.
Yeah, they represent like certain ways of responding to this crisis, which happens to be the end of the world.
They also represent, for the first half, they represent different ways people react to a depressed person. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, whenever someone is suffering from clinical depression, there are different people react differently to them. Some are a little more sympathetic, some want to help, and other people just want to slap and go, "Hey, just cheer up," just snap out of it, just put on a happy face.
My problem is that every single other character in the movie had the snap out of it, put on a happy face.
Yeah, I
like
think so too.
there wasn't a sort of like gradient of reactions to this depressed person. It was just like, everyone's mean to me because I'm depressed and now the world's gonna end.
Right. I think the movie could have helped more if maybe there was another sympathetic character in there trying to help, but that probably wouldn't have solidified the thesis of the movie.
Character. I didn't even think Kristen Dunst was a sympathetic character at all.
You don't feel like she was something you could kind of latch on to?
No. I felt like her depression was too dramatic.
You're thinking that her performance keeps the audience at a distance.
I think the entire movie keeps you at a distance.
Right. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of like, it has a voyeuristic quality. Mm-hmm. When the camera's at a far distance zooming in, they're actually doing the zoom things. Like, these are like hidden cameras capturing this. It does sort of keep you at a distance in that sort of style.
I feel like you're kept from a distance just from the plot. From in the very beginning of the movie, you see Earth crashing into another planet, and then that's not even brought up until the second half.
The second half, and this is after the wedding. Well, the first half is about the wedding reception. Second half is about, we have a planet coming at us. The voyeuristic thing, I think that's probably what it's also. I think what you might also be looking for is for Kirsten Dunst's character is a kind of a Malikian inner monologue that you can listen in on and get more of her perspective on things. The movie kind of starts out with you believing that she's happy, right?
Yes.
That she's a happy person. They're having fun with the limo driver. They can't get the damn car.
It's kind of stereotypically happy, right?
Yeah, we actually get a stereotypical happy thing, and then she starts to fall apart.
But it's not just fall apart, right? It's something, there's a lot of kind of self-sabotage that's going on, too.
Yeah, there's like a systemic problem within her.
Which is a big part of depression, yeah. I mean, she's isolating herself, and she I feel like the movie implies that she's been going through this her whole life, and she got to some sort of point where she was able to get things organized and meet this guy and get married and all this stuff and organize this whole. And her sister and her brother-in-law organized this whole thing for her. And once she realized it was all coming to head, she just can't do it.
Right.
And broke down again. Like, this has probably happened before.
Right. And everything that should stereotypically be in place as a support system isn't there for her. Her father has moved on and is with 2 other women at the party, which he brought to her wedding. And her mother, for lack of a better phrase, is crazy. I mean, a lot of her worldview comes from her mother.
Yeah.
So these are 2 things that she constantly throughout that first half looks to, and it just isn't there. I think in terms of why there isn't a more sympathetic character that could relate to Justine, in terms of drawing an audience in, is that you are supposed to feel that this is an unlikable character. I think you're supposed to kind of relate more to the sister in the first half. You're supposed to see this as kind of like, oh, this is ridiculous.
But Claire has such an exaggerated reaction to Justine's condition. I mean, it seemed to me that she was an older sister, and yet she was acting like
a younger sister.
She had never encountered, this sort of breakdown before, and that, I don't know.
I thought she did, though, because she takes her sister aside and says, "We talked about this. You're not going to make a scene, right?"
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
but she doesn't say that. She's like, "You can't make a scene. Like, this is so important. Do you know how much money he spent? Like, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
It's not...
As exasperated as she gets, though, I think she's really patient with her, actually. That's kind of the 2 halves of this movie, is they experiencing it and then having to deal with people that are like this. It's seeing it from both of those sides.
Yeah, and I think it's about them sort of dealing with it, but not really ever understanding it.
It just is.
Yeah. Well, let's dive right into the beginning of the movie. It opens on Kirsten Dunst starts off this whole slow motion montage. There's birds falling from the sky. There's shots of the planets in space. People running. What did you guys think of this intro?
I thought the intro was great. The intro looked fantastic. It was a great introduction sequence. It worked with the music, and it was really amazing slow motion. I don't know how many frames per second you got to capture to get that, but it looked like, it almost looked like, there were times when I was second guessing myself, like, wait, is that a still image? But then I saw something move slightly, so.
I could be wrong, but I think I read about it. I think it was on the red. I think it was digital.
The red can accomplish those extreme fast frame rates. That's amazing. So. That's really amazing.
I mean, but that montage is pretty long. Did it keep your attention? Do you think it was a good hook?
I think it's supposed to serve a couple kind of functions. It is supposed to kind of act as like an overture to kind of give you an idea about the tone of the movie. And it's supposed to be kind of a contrast to the rest of the movie, especially like that first half that's set in the wedding. But it's also supposed to basically spoil the ending of the movie for you. So it's kind of like there's no bones about it. Like, this is what's going to happen. And that's what's kind of interesting going into...
Isn't that depressing that the world's going to end?
No, I think there's like a weird kind of like tension that comes out of it, especially in the second half when you're kind of with Claire and you think like, oh, for some reason, it's such a weird thing that happens. Like, for some reason you think, well, maybe this is going to miss. Maybe we're going to be totally fine. We're just worrying about this unnecessarily. And then there's that realization that there is no escape. Like, this is it. And we were told this in the first 8 minutes of the movie. So, yeah, it in storytelling terms, it works that way. But I think more importantly, more than anything, it's supposed to kind of set a tone.
Yeah. And then it cuts to the title card, which I don't really like. Does he have a title card like that in all of his movies?
Some of his later ones, yeah. It's kind of like that hand-drawn type. He does an Antichrist as well.
I just don't get it. I mean, that movie has other regular titles. Why does the title of them... I don't know. It didn't match up for me.
I don't know.
It just kind of broke the flow.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, after that it cuts to them having the limo trouble, which, I mean, it's kind of a funny scene, but it really kind of, is really jarring after that opening.
It's going from something macro to something very micro, like it's just this couple.
Yeah. And they seem happy, and they're going up the hill, and you automatically know what's going on. It's a wedding and all that. they end up walking up to the top, and you find out that they're late. And that's when you get the first introduction to Claire, and like right away you know that she's really controlling and anal, and because she's complaining that they're late and they're off schedule and all that.
Also, in that same scene, though, that we're introduced to the sister and the brother-in-law, like, that's the first time that we kind of see Justine kind of duck out. Because if you remember, she immediately goes like, oh, the horses are here, you know, because of the stable, and she kind of ducks out, and they introduce that whole running theme with the horses that starts there. She's already kind of avoiding the process of getting married.
No, they were already married. That was the reception.
Oh, I'm sorry. So she's avoiding the reception, I suppose. Having to be with all of those people in the room.
She's avoiding the reality of being married.
Yeah.
We find out that she works in advertising, and her boss is there. There's just this whole wedding scene goes on for a while, and there's lots of good little moments with John Hurt and Stellan Skarsgård. And then there's the speech with the mom, who you find out is a total bitch. And I like that she's just wearing like this really bland dress. It's almost like a t-shirt material.
Yeah, she didn't.
Also, it was tie-dyed.
Yeah, she didn't dress up at all. She didn't feel like this is something that you have to dress up for.
Yeah.
Like she kind of had to be dragged here.
And another good little highlight of those scenes is the party planner. What's that actor's name?
Udo Kier.
Udo Kier is in there, and everything is going wrong, and he's like avoiding her, putting his hand over his face and stuff.
Yeah, he will not. He will not look at her.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty active sequence. Like it keeps it going, and
everything's in there kind of for a reason. Because I don't know. It feels like to me it's kind of like going to this thing where you don't know these people, and you kind of figure out the relationships by how they react to one another. So you're just kind of thrown in on the middle of it. It really felt authentic to that, and it's also kind of small in that scale. It's like how different the first half is from the second half.
Yeah, and so far it feels sort of like you get that intro, which is really interesting, and then you get them going to the wedding, which is just kind of like you're kind of going along with it for now, and then we get to the first scene of real depression, where she kind of goes to hide away, and her sister comes to talk to her, and she has that thing where she talks about how she's trudging through thick gray yarn,
which was shown in the prologue or
whatever.
Yeah, a lot of these things that are kind of talked about are shown literally in the prologue.
Yeah, and then the way that her sister reacts to it, you automatically get the idea that this has happened before, and like, you know, they've been dealing with this for a while, and you know it's time. You know,
it's kind of time to get yourself together, type of thing, right?
Yeah. Like, they thought that this was going to be... They thought that she was doing well, you know. They keep saying, smile and be happy, you're doing well, and are you happy? And she says yes for a while, but then she totally just breaks down, and she keeps trying to ditch all the different events, the cake cutting, and the dancing, and all the different things.
Yeah, but they kind of have that scene happen together with the mother ducking out to have a bath in a different part of the house, in which Justine is also ducking out to have a bath, too.
And the whole time, Kiefer Sutherland is just furious with all this.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. He goes to throw the mother out, and the butler comes and collects all of her stuff and brings it back.
Yeah, there's little character things in there.
Yeah, I think they actually develop a lot of this family in that sequence. And you get an idea of, you know, where she came from and what it was like for her growing up and stuff, just in this one little sequence. And then you even get more of an idea of maybe how she ended up meeting this guy, Michael, who is her husband, that he shows her the plot of land. So they've been having this like plan for a while to buy a farm and grow apples and stuff. Like it really kind of colors their backstory in a really nice way really quickly.
It really colors that character really quickly too, because he is seen as so, or I shouldn't say seen, but shown as so kind of like idealistic and overly romantic, and that's something that Kirsten Dunst's
But I
character
think
isn't.
that every character that becomes interesting during the first half of the movie is not in the second half of the movie.
Okay.
You know, post-wedding, in the Claire section, all you get is Claire, Kiefer Sutherland,
The kid.
and Justine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the point of building all of that for the first half?
I think it's just sort of to establish what her life was and what she's lost.
But do we understand what her life was like at all? I mean, she's a grown woman with It's not like she has been living with her parents anytime.
No, but I mean, her
Recently,
parents, it seems like definitely raised her, and so she's kind of inherited a lot of that. And you could see where that might color how she views relationships, and maybe that would be superficially kind of why she would reject something like this, right?
But then I feel like nothing from the first half of the movie has any effect or any bearing on what she feels through the second half of the movie.
You don't feel like that the wedding and that kind of self-destruction is kind of the catalyst for what happens in her attitudes in the second half of the movie, though? Like, because that's how I saw it. I saw it like the second half, like, looking at it rationally, and not all the whole, pseudo-realism that's in there is kind of, this is where her life totally fell apart for various reasons, and this is, like, kind of the aftermath of that, where she can't even take care of herself, and Claire has to take care of her and everything like that, and she's taking that upon herself, and...
Yeah, and
right, but she has no development. She has a breakdown, but then there's no development after that. Then she's just like, oh, I'm sad. Then the world's gonna end, and then, oh, here we go. I told you guys, world's over.
Okay.
But I mean,
and maybe at the end when she builds the little teepee out of sticks, but that's.
But I think maybe I'm good, taking this too far. But I feel like that might be kind of still part of the depression metaphor, is that you lose these whole moments of your life. I mean, she had a major breakdown at that night, and that whole part of her life just never happened after that point. If she lost everybody, and she, that's how I interpreted it. It was like we were witnessing her last kind of chance at coming back to reality and being quote unquote happy, and it all just fell apart.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
And the world is ending now.
Also.
Yeah.
Well, you could do that. Yeah, you could say also the world is ending literally, or it's kind of figuratively. Like this is something that's been in the works for a long time, and it works like as if, for this character, it's literally like the world is ending.
But it also happens pretty literally in the movie.
It does,
like,
yeah.
It's not...
It does.
But the whole party sequence kind of wraps up with her telling off her boss. She doesn't give him a tagline. She tells him he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, she basically quits.
But I mean, she also rejects her, rejects sex from her husband, and...
Mm-hmm. She rejects sex from her husband and
sex.
then takes sex from...
a guy on a sand dune. And...
Yeah, she just bangs that new guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a part where they, towards the end, where they go and like launch those little balloons.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're launching those balloons, she looks through the telescope and it cuts to like shots of nebula.
Yeah, what did you think about that?
I didn't buy that sequence. I
Why?
thought it was kind of forced.
Why?
I thought it would have been better maybe just to show shots of the planet, but just showing these shots of space, I didn't think that was kind of like in line with the point the movie's trying to make. Like that there's this big galaxy out, there's this big universe out there,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. Like this isn't Tree of Life, I just thought it felt kind of out of place.
I thought, well, they touched upon that later on in a conversation between Justine and what's the sister's name? Claire. Between Justine and Claire, where Claire wants to say that there's life out there, and Justine's depressed, and she says, "No, there is no other life out there. We're it."
Mm-hmm.
She comes to a realization there is no life out there, or something. I suppose.
Yeah, the point's basically that
she finally looks into the universe and sees nothing but stars.
Yeah, we're just alone. Mm-hmm. I think it ties into that too. Yeah, I kind of saw it watching it this time through as like kind of a hint that like all that distance away, like, is this thing coming, even though we don't see it. Mm-hmm. I thought that's what it was kind of referring to, but that's kind of interesting. That could be interpreted that way. It's kind of like that moment of realization, like going through all of these steps for all of these things that were planned out in this wedding reception.
I think that's another part of the whole wedding reception, is that it's all kind of pointless. And
well, isn't that a source of depression? Is an understanding of the ultimate futility behind everything?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't mean to laugh in your face, but yes, that's true. That's true. But it was just the delivery was very good. Isn't it true that life is pointless and we're all going to die? Yes, yes. I think that's kind of summed up in that first half with the guessing how many beans are in the jar type of thing.
Right.
It's just this parlor game that's meant to.
Who gives
kinda,
a fuck how many beans are in that fucking jar, asshole?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But none of that is related to the second half of the movie, except through that first couple of minutes of, amazing shots of planets.
But I mean, are you thinking that you could have done without this whole wedding sequence? Like we could have more or less started with the second half of the movie, like she's.
No,
depressed,
I'm saying we could
this
have
is
done
her
without
sister.
this whole end of the world sequence.
The prologue thing, or
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or I think the first half and the second half just don't go together at all.
You know what though? I think about those two halves. One half has one name, and the other half has another name. The first one is
Justine.
Justine. The other one is Claire. We're allowed to have two alternate perspectives, and those we switch perspectives when the planet is coming to crash in. It kind of reminds me. There was this episode of The Honeymooners. Who's the big guy?
That's Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason. All right, now who is the guy with the funny hat?
That's Art Carney.
All right, so Jackie Gleason, he's down and he's depressed. He's like skulking, and his arms are folded. And,
You ever feel like the world is ending?
yeah, but Art Carney, he walks up to him and says, "What's wrong?" Jackie Gleason responds, "What's right?"
Ah,
And it's kind of like,
half full or half empty.
yeah. Well, one's saying, "What's wrong with you?" and then with the other side, everything's wrong, and then, it's a matter of, well, we basically put both perspectives to the test in both halves. So,
I think so. Yeah, because I think
which is like, you're sad. It's like Justine saying, you're depressed now because the world's coming to an end. Every day of my life, the world has always been coming to an end. And this is why this whole thing is easier to deal with. I never had a world to love to begin with, so losing this
isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point of like her whole attitude in the second act is that she's like, I told you guys, this is how bad it is. Like, it doesn't matter, it's all gonna end.
But she doesn't know. They don't. The people in the film, and I think the audience are misled by Kiefer Sutherland through probably 3/4 of the second half of the movie, where he's saying that, like, we did the math, like, the planet's not going to hit, it's nothing, don't worry about it.
But like, isn't that the whole point, to be misled? Because aren't we supposed to identify with the two female characters that don't know about astronomy, even as a hobby? So then when that does happen and he's not there anymore, it's kind of a big deal.
But that's such a small part of the movie, I don't know, I didn't feel like it had that big of an impact. Whereas, like, everything, the wide spectrum of things that these two women go through leading up to that are in no way connected to that, because they have no way of knowing about it.
They have no way of knowing about what?
Just the simple fact that the world's ending. I mean, you made it pretty clear yourself that you were making fun of the fact that she just goes on Google and, like, the first link she clicks is the end of the world death dance. And
Well, no, I got really disappointed in that because that makes me think of, like, all these 2012 rumors and conspiracies and stuff, because that's the kind of shit that comes up on #1 on Google search, and it sort of
right,
promotes...
but no one knows what's going on until Kiefer Sutherland kills himself.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, shit, I guess we have 15 minutes to reconcile with our fate here, even though we've been depressed this whole time. Like,
well, Kiefer...
I feel like it's just unnecessary.
Kiefer served as Claire's rock that kept her grounded into a reality that she wanted to believe that this planet was just going to pass us by. And then after he kills himself, her rock to this kind of faith that the planet won't come and kill us is gone, and then she freaks out. She wants to get the car moving. She wants to get a golf cart driving into town. Why?
We don't
something
know.
to do. Just
Yeah.
because she impulsively needs to do something to protect her son. I thought the part where she finally gives in and falls down with the kid in in the field with the hail coming down was really good.
Oh, that's
I thought
a
that was
beautiful
really, I
shot.
thought that was a great moment when she finally just gives in and just sits down there when the hail's coming down, realizing we're not going anywhere and this planet's going to crash into us. And then she kind of deals with it a little bit better. She's still really sad, but she's not irrationally trying to frantically run around, as people would do in a situation like that.
Yeah, that's like her first response is, to run into town or to just, she's basically panicking. But then you see that she's also, it's just in her nature that she wants to kind of put some sort of control on this. And then it's like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. The world's going to end, but we're going to sit down. We're going to be on the terrace, and like she already tries to put these plans up.
Have some wine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As most people would try to come up with, towards the end of the world,
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what the second half is doing with each of the characters, is they each represent a different sort of reaction to this.
Oh yeah, and
scenario.
like Kiefer, people would just fucking kill themselves because they don't want to deal with.
But I don't understand the
ending in front
difference
of them.
between Claire's and Justine's reactions to it.
Well, Claire is trying to control it and make it something normal, like make it something that...
Or something that you can clean up.
Okay, so Justine is then like, let's build a teepee out of sticks. Isn't that weird?
I think she's doing that for the kids.
She's doing
really.
that for the... Yeah.
Yeah, you see, Justine has always been living her entire life with this giant death planet that's going to smash, with this understanding of this ultimate futility between all things, because we're all going to die anyway, and if you break mankind down to the petty basics, we're all just animals, and we're all just dirty, depraved, selfish creatures, and there's really nothing to take joy and pleasure in unless you want to take part of this ongoing fantasy about what is good and noble, which is all a fallacy or something like that. And she sees other people in her family partaking in the same little song and dance, which is artificial and stupid and shallow and meaningless, with all the little traditions and customs that they get involved in. She just can't find any joy in it because she knows it's all fake and stupid.
Yeah, because it's like she knows it's all fake and stupid, because she knows it's all just going to end one day. And she sees that end coming, and then it does come in the form of this,
how does she see the end coming?
Because she's depressed, and she just sees the future as hopeless and as nothing matters, because she's just going to die.
She sees herself as insignificant, ultimately.
And I think she acts the most level-headed and normal during the panic sequences. It's kind of like, well, this is what we've been living with.
So I mean, then isn't this movie sort of indulgent to her?
Yeah, it's totally indulgent.
I'm depressed. The world's gonna end, and then guess what? It does, and everyone else is wrong, and I'm right. And
it's totally indulgent into what it is like to be depressed, to be in that state of like complete hopelessness, and like, like I said, nothing matters because I know the world's just gonna end, and we're all gonna die one day.
I mean, I think Justine literally is a cipher for Lars von Trier in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lars
this
von
was the
Trier's
first
depression.
movie.
No, it's Lars von Trier trying to. I think it's a very personal film.
Yeah, this was the first movie after he came out of his big depression.
Yeah, this is Lars von Trier trying to let the audience in on his own inner turmoils like that. However, maybe I picked up on this. Maybe this is just my own interpretation, but right before the planet is smashing, you see Justine tearing up. It almost looks like that's a sincere sadness. Like when she looks at her sister crying because the world's about to end, it's almost like it's no longer a selfish sadness. Now she's sad because she's seeing something that's really genuinely sad, and she's feeling sad for real. And it's almost like a good thing. Like, oh, now I get to experience what real sadness is like. This is really sad. What's about to happen, this is really sad right now. And I got the sense that when we're zooming in on her tearing up, looking at her, it's just like, oh, I get it now. Like,
well,
I finally get to feel real sadness.
And I think that's just the
indulgence
of the story. That she gets to have a big old sadness boner at the end of it. That's the indulgence. The just indulging this sort of depressive mood.
And I think it's totally indulgent, and it's a movie about depression. So I mean, what's wrong with that?
Depression is a kind of indulgence, though.
Yeah, it's very selfish.
With depression, you become addicted to your own chemicals that your brain is producing. The thing about people who suffer from depression is that they become addicted to the depression, they keep feeding off those depression chemicals that are pumping into their own brains, and so that's why it's hard for people to get out of depression, is because they're addicted to depression, like how happy people are addicted to happiness. It's entirely the opposite. And you become addicted to the self-talk that you say to yourself. And you got to rework your self-talk you got to rework the way your brain produces certain chemicals and certain reactions.
And people that don't think that way would think this is totally alien, that type of thing?
Perhaps. No. People who've never experienced depression in their life would probably not be able to connect at all with what's going on. At any level. Perhaps. Nothing would ring true. You know.
Well, yeah, I mean, so we talked a little bit about Claire and stuff, and that takes us into the second part. The first part ends with them riding horses and her noticing that the star has moved, or isn't in this, hasn't appeared in the same place. And then it cuts to Claire, and right away we get the idea that everybody knows this planet's coming, and Claire's getting scared. Justine has had some sort of breakdown, and she's coming to live with them. There's a couple scenes at the beginning of her just being, generally really depressed, like her not taking the bath.
Basically catatonic.
Yeah, which is what depression is like. I mean, it can make you totally just, you sleep all day and you don't eat and all this stuff, and like she tries to eat and she says it tastes like ashes. She spits it back up. There's a part where she goes gardening. There's like that scene where she dumps her berries and she only has like 5 little berries. There's lots of little touches there. It also starts snowing in that scene. Do you remember that part? I guess that has something to do with Melancholia.
I'm guessing, yeah, there's a lot of kind of weird environmental things that happen. I think that's the first instance of that, right? Maybe the planet having an effect on the Earth. But that's kind of a running theme through there too, is like unnatural things happening. It seems like the animals kind of know that something weird is going on, even though they can't understand that there is anything huge going on. That's kind of a common thing in this, and Antichrist, actually. Both. I think it's kind of interesting to see those two movies kind of as, two different parts to each other, because they're both kind of post-depression, post-breakdown movies, and both kind of about human relationships, and kind of like what gets in the way. In an exaggerated form, of course, but yeah, that snow is kind of the first instance of something vaguely unnatural, something that shouldn't be happening that is happening, type of things.
And then we see Kiefer Sutherland is gathering supplies, and that's where we get more doubt of his point of view,
But it's also somebody that's rational. That's what they would do. Well, just in case something goes wrong, like we'll have a couple canisters of gasoline, we'll have some lanterns, some canned food. It's like, well, if this thing doesn't miss us, it's like...
Yeah, he says this is in case it gets too close.
Yeah.
Just in case. But the science is right.
Right, exactly.
And soon after that, we get a scene which I think is really like the centerpiece and kind of the whole thesis of the movie, is the scene of her basking in the light of Melancholia nude.
Right.
That's just, like we were saying earlier, that's the selfishness of depression. That's just her, like, that she looks kind of happy, if you can say that, you know, and she's...
Or some
she's
kind of
pleased.
contentment she's getting from this.
Basking in the light of this alien planet, and that's depression, like Steve was saying. You feed off it.
That's definitely von Trier showing his Bergman influence. That's kind of another director that understands depression pretty well, I think. But that was very Bergman-esque, I think. That whole sequence, I thought it was really well edited.
Claire catches her doing it, right?
Yeah, she sees Justine leaving in the middle of the night, and just kind of follows behind her to see what's going on, and it's kind of this reveal. And just that's another scene where judging Claire's face kind of tells us how to feel about it. Like, she looks kind of puzzled and disturbed. Like, oh, okay.
And then soon after that, we get the Google search scene. The website she's using is called W Search. I really don't like this scene.
Does the W stand for world?
Yeah, world search.
Oh, web search.
World Wide Web.
Yeah. Okay, that's probably true.
I don't like any movie that shows computer screens. I just think that's always really tacky.
Yeah.
They almost pulled it off in The Social Network.
Yeah.
But even that was a little tacky.
Well, even that had the I'm gonna just flail around on the keyboard and I'm gonna add in some computer programming. It has that like this like flash animation type of thing.
I mean, and it looked like a real search engine and everything the way she did it, but it was just really silly. Like, and I again, I think it really promotes like the pseudoscience angle. Like, just click on the first link that comes up on Google, and that's the truth. And it turns out to be the truth, like, which is really upsetting because that's not. That's
Do you
not
expect
what
Lars to
is,
take a
you know?
position on that, though? That
No.
That's what you want?
That's what I want. But
Yeah, I know
not
that's what you want, but
Well,
Lars might be on your side too, but for the sake of the movie,
right.
the planet is going to smash.
But
with Earth.
so here's my question. Like that's kind of a complaint that I've heard from other people. What would be a way around that? How? Because I mean,
well, they still have the scene where she uses the little thing, the measuring tool, to like see that the planet's getting bigger. Just have that happen.
so do you think you could get away without having like the diagram and somebody else kind of? I'm just trying to figure out a way kind of around that whole.
Yeah,
get
they
an
had
answer
plenty
from
of
the
scenes
internet.
with her saying it's going to come back, it's going to hit us, and
So just her anxiety about it.
yeah, just have somebody say like it's
Yeah,
going to spin
I
around
think-
and hit us.
I think a lot of my problem with the movie is that it is so heavy-handed, and I agree with Jeff that if she just used that little stick thing. And,
I thought the stick
and,
sequence
and
was
if
great.
and if you know no one really knew because the characters are so isolated in the movie that if like no one really knew what was gonna happen, that it would have been much more interesting. You know, if she were putting her faith in this like stick with some metal on it,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
or versus her sister's like depressive faith that the world's gonna end, versus her husband's faith that it's not because he's the only sort of sane character in the movie, even though he's an asshole.
Well, you know, at the same time, Google is such an integrated part of our society now. It almost feels like you got to circumvent Google nowadays if you want to make a movie that's taking place in present time. You know, when it comes to something that's involving world events, it's like it feels awkward now. It feels awkward to avoid the internet, even though it's such an integral part of our society.
Well, how about television? I mean, this is a place that is supposed to be kind of remote. It does seem like it's kind of a getaway.
Yeah, at the same time, there's no television.
There's no television. There's never a scene like out of Independence Day where it's like people are going crazy and shooting at the sky.
Yeah, we get no concept of what's going on in the rest of the world.
Also, nobody has a cell phone. Nobody calls them.
No,
You would think
no.
that during the end of the world, like their phones would be ringing off the hook.
Or what I thought was when they couldn't get to their wedding on time, that people would be calling them.
right.
You know, it just doesn't make any
And yet
sense.
they're surprised that they're late.
Yeah.
I feel like as a filmmaker, not that I'm a filmmaker, but if I was making a major film, I wouldn't want to have that burden of having characters have cell phones.
Yeah,
Like, that really limits a lot of, like...
definitely.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea.
Definitely.
It makes everything too easy, you know, because then you could just call somebody.
I guess, but I mean, that would be another device that you could
Well, it's,
use.
it's like obliterated the mystery store, the modern mystery.
It's kind of like
thing.
Same thing with the internet.
Remember, like in the Departed, how much cell phone was being used in there, and it kind of opens this weird Pandora's box of communication that's going on. It's like it's hard to keep all that shit straight because now everyone can just call each other up and.
But something that happens throughout the movie is that it seems like the planet is having an effect not only on the weather and animals and stuff like that, but hey, maybe cell phones don't work anymore. I mean, that was something you could kind of work around.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's like lightning in the sky in this movie. I don't know.
But there's no change. Mm-hmm. There's no change for really any of the characters. I felt.
You think you expect a kind of like an arc for each of them? When
or just
with the world ending,
or just something to happen for there to be some reaction somewhere, other than Kiefer Sutherland, who's like, well, I was wrong. I'm gonna kill myself. I'll take all these suicide pills.
That was really lame.
Yeah, can you get a prescription for suicide pills?
Yeah, it's not the beach.
Okay, that's true. I think
I don't mean no change necessarily, but like no development. Like there is a change in Claire where she's like, "Oh, I'm just kind of a bitch," and then she's like, "Oh, I'm a sad bitch," you know.
I think that I don't. There isn't an arc. I think it's the first half is just supposed to set up these characters, and then the second half is the event. That's what I think kind of the concept is. There isn't a change though, but
Right, and I think aside from the introduction, there's nothing that really screams art film about the second half or the first half of the movie to me. But then, you know, when it shifts into the second half, the Claire chapter, it gets much more artsy and much more like minimalist as far as like speaking and acting goes, and more focused on the shots.
Mm-hmm. Kind of less naturalistic.
Yeah.
Do you think you could have handled a whole movie like that?
Like what?
Like the first half
Like
or the
the
second
second
half?
half?
Neither. Because I fucking hate this movie.
No,
like the second half, I think it would have been much more interesting. It would have been like Another Earth.
The movie wasn't interesting.
No.
What point are you making with that?
But it's it's the same kind of thing. It's just like this, like sad people art film that decides to incorporate unnecessarily some sort of
but
cosmological.
Another Earth
disaster.
really was a dropped ball. It really was like there really wasn't any point to Another Earth though.
I don't think this movie. I don't think you know. It's interesting is that before I saw this movie, when it came to Lars von Trier, my attitude was, "Oh man, what am I gonna do with this guy?" I really liked Zentropa.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that movie. It was one of those movies that I just caught when we used to have the Independent Film Channel. I'm just looking at this movie, and again, the Independent Film Channel, when it was really good, it felt like I was looking at this other world of cinema, this really interesting, rich cinema coming in. So,
did you find it kind of hard to get through Zentropa the first time watching it, or did you get kind of hooked into it?
I actually got hooked into Zentropa, and there's a few with the back rear projection scenes. Some of them were a little off and didn't quite work out as well, but I appreciated most of what was going on, and so I really liked Zentropa. I think the fact that it was on film and most of the audio was done in post, it gave it kind of a distant, you know. I really like Zentropa. I like the black and white. I like the look of it, and then Lars von Trier. Then I had to get to know Lars von Trier.
Right.
I wasn't that impressed with the man himself, and so each time Lars von Trier came around, I was like, I don't know, because he doesn't want to ride an airplane or something like that. And he's got cynical things to say about America. So I'm like,
right.
You know, my initial reaction is, well, screw you. You're another one of these Euro assholes. You're another Euro asshole. Even though you're another Euro asshole, but I liked Zentropa, and that's pretty much that's pretty much where I kept it. And I held on to that for about a decade.
Okay.
But you know what's interesting is that after watching Melancholia, I kind of feel more sympathetic towards Lars von Trier as a person now.
Okay.
Now I guess it's sort of strange. Now I kind of want to not be sympathetic. Now I kind of want to give him a little more of a break because I don't know. I mean, this feels like a really personal project, and he wanted to say something very personal, and regardless of your weird sort of joking around about how you sympathize with Hitler, you know, You've got some interesting things to say, and doesn't mean no one should listen to what you have to say.
Right. I mean, I wonder if your impression of von Trier was kind of how Europeans feel about Tarantino, where it's like you can't really take in a Tarantino movie without taking in Tarantino. I mean, he's a big part. He's behind his movies so much, and especially when Reservoir Dogs came out, and you know, around the time of Pulp Fiction, you probably remember where it's just like everybody was interviewing.
After it won the Palme d'Or, some Europeans were pissed off.
Sure. So I wonder if it's just kind of that flip, where it's like, oh, Tarantino.
Let me tell you something. I don't like Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
However, his movies are pretty good.
Right.
That's what I'll say. He's a fucking American wanker asshole, but I liked Pulp Fiction.
So you're saying
That's all I want to say.
The Brits don't like him? What about the French? Do the French like him?
Bullshit! Hey, bullshit!
Except for David Lynch. They fucking love that guy.
I think a lot of Europeans think he's European.
Oh, okay.
I think that's probably what it is. Wait,
Okay.
you're an American, right? Wait, you're an American? You're the director of Eraserhead.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not a Swedish filmmaker.
Right.
It was very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. I was confused there for a second.
So Zentropa was the only Von Trier movie that you'd seen before?
And then I looked into a few other films. I figured, I don't know. Like there was Mandalay, and Antichrist, but that was more recently. But then previously he did like some sort of.
You see Dancer in the Dark?
Was that the musical with Bjork?
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked down. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Bjork.
Bjork?
Dancer in the Dark is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's also a movie. It's one of those movies that you watch and you're kind of like, that was really good, but I never want to watch that movie ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those few examples where you're like, that is just, it's too devastating. I don't want to. But it also kind of works on this weird dream logic, kind of like Melancholia does, where it's like, if you don't go along for the ride, then you're just going to be left behind, that type of thing. Just in Bjork's character in that movie, where it's like, I don't think anybody would act that way, but it's necessary to tell that story. It's like the script is telling her to act this way, that type of thing. She needs to be a victim, so that's why she's acting this way, that type of thing.
So we've pretty much covered most of it. Well, we just have the ending now.
Right.
When things start to catch up to the overture again. She builds a little teepee for the kid, and I've seen this movie a few times now, and
it kind of leads up to that, because basically Justine notices that Neil, the kid, is basically starting to realize this and getting kind of freaked out, and how she responds differently to that than her sister.
But how does that fit to her character at all?
That's what I wanted to ask you.
We've seen.
Yeah, that's what I wanted
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't at all.
it's odd. Yeah, I mean, her super depressed character.
You and Steve both said yourself that like depression is indulgent and selfish. And then why would she all of a sudden be like, oh, the world's actually ending, let me build a fucking teepee?
I think
it doesn't make
it was
any
the
sense.
fact that she's been dealing with depression for so long, the world ending is not so bad for her, which allows her to deal with it a little bit better, which allows her to help this kid out.
Yeah,
So
but this is kind of what she has been expecting.
Yeah, she's a pro when it comes to the world ending.
Yeah.
I guess
But I don't think that would literally make it any easier. I don't know. I think that would just affirm the depression instead of alleviating it.
No, I think a person suffering from clinical depression would be kind of indifferent to the world ending.
Well, I mean, it depends on what level you're at, but like she's obviously at a very depressed.
I don't think it would activate some like benevolent circuit that hasn't, existed before.
I don't know. You hear about things about like suicidal depressives that when they decided like they're actually going to kill themselves, like you hear about that's one of the warning signs. Like they get very happy, they treat people differently, they give their stuff away, they get, stuff like that.
It's like now it's over.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like now here
it's
it
like
comes.
they're relieved of this weight.
Yeah.
It's okay, I'm gonna die.
I mean, that's the thing I wanted to ask you guys about, is why she changes, like what symbolically, because that's really what it is. It's a movie of ideas. It's not really a movie of human behavior necessarily. So what does that symbolize? What is that a symbol of? Is Neil like kind of an example of innocence? Is it that easy? Is it just like...
I mean, that's what you want to say at first, is sort of like her protecting the innocent or whatever. But that does seem too easy. And that's what I was saying before, is that I've seen this movie a few times, and I've kind of struggled with what that kid represents. Like, why he's in the movie. I don't really know.
He's supposed to be innocence, I guess.
Is it just that simple?
It could also be...
Well, I feel like before everything he's done before, it's been related to science with his father. They're crafting these silly planet detectors and whatnot.
Or it could just be... It could be that... much like... I noticed this a little bit, maybe just because the director doesn't have as much of an investment in the child. It's kind of like The Godfather, or another mob movie. Same little complaint I noticed in the show Boardwalk Empire, where children are kind of treated like props. It's kind of like a living prop that the characters we're supposed to care about have to deal with. We don't care about the fucking kids. We don't try to look at everything from the kid's perspective. They're just a living prop that the adults have to deal with. I'm guessing. So don't think too much about the kid. Lars wasn't thinking too much about that kid either.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, and something else I was thinking about the end with the kid and building the teepee and stuff. Like that part when she starts building that and they're cutting the wood and everything, like that makes me think, what would I do in the end of the world? Like, I don't know if that's what he was trying to do, or that's kind of where you're supposed to put yourself towards the end of the movie. But, like, what would you do in the last few seconds, you know, before this planet collides with ours?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd fucking have some wine on the terrace with my loved ones.
Would you choose Beethoven's Ninth?
Yes.
You know what's funny is that before they mentioned Beethoven's Ninth, that's exactly what I was thinking, though.
That's what you would choose?
I was thinking I would have... No, before they even mentioned Beethoven's Ninth in the movie, I figured, all right, so they're going to figure an actual time, whether it be a planet or an asteroid that's going to hit. They would have an actual, like, time when it's supposed to hit, you know, down to the minutes, perhaps, you know, because they've calculated everything like that. So I would cue Beethoven's Ninth in my iPod and then get it ready to play.
Let's just say your MP3 player.
I would take my player that plays MP3 files, and I would make sure I press play when it's exactly the time length of it before before the world ends. That way, the world ends right on the crescendo. And so either I would get on top of the roof of my house, or I would go. But first, I would go visit my. I would visit my local smoke shop and get the finest, most expensive, nicest cigar they had. American
cigar.
Fucking cigar. A really nice, like $70, you know, the finest cigar they got, and I would just enjoy that thing. You know, and hopefully I get to actually see it coming. That way I can look at it when it's coming down, and then I could listen to Beethoven's Ninth, and then.
Oh, Beethoven's Ninth. It's the free bird of the classical music world. Here's a thought. Maybe the whole instance with the kid is to make Justine slightly more likable at the end of the movie.
But what's the point of that?
That's a good question. I don't know. Because she's outwardly cruel to her own sister, who's trying to control her life and, you know, to control the situation, but it brings out sympathy. Sympathy comes out for the child. So I don't know.
Depression in itself is a tough subject matter to tackle, you know, in movies or something like that. It's difficult to do. It's been attempted before, I think, with Neon Genesis Evangelion. I think I like Evangelion's attempt at tapping into it a little bit more, with Shinji going through, you know, obvious clinical depression, even to the point of being like Justine was, almost catatonic depression. He's like, you can't even, you're trying to get him off the floor, you can't even, you know.
Right.
And, you know, again, we have the world about to end, same sort of thing. I think the problem is I don't think so many of the pieces fit together as well.
Well, it's just ham-fisted.
With the wedding reception thing going on, and then we're looking at John Hurt playing with spoons, and
Does the wedding reception
I'm actually not remembering a lot of the movie. That's kind of a problem. Like, nothing, you know.
Were you watching it with us?
I was watching it with you guys, but nothing seemed that kind of rich or iconic or want to stick out or something to really latch onto.
Okay.
Moments come and moments go. You know, during this podcast, I'm kind of like remembering, oh yeah, that did happen. When the second half is way more memorable. The second half, I thought the second half was far superior to the first half. In the second half, I got a lot more engaged. I think it's because a planet's about to crash, you know, but I thought the second half was really... I thought the second half was much more engaging because then we got to see what the family deals with Justine's depression when it's getting really bad, you know. And I really wish we could have gotten to know Justine a little bit more intimately. You know, I think we were kept at too much of a distance from Justine. I think if we were allowed to get... I really would like if we were allowed to get closer to her, but I don't know if von Trier, like Tim Burton, knows how to really intimately get close to a character, you know.
You think you wanted to spend some time with her alone?
Yeah, or really just maybe her look at something and then we get a reaction shot of what it is she's looking at, but again, that voyeuristic, distant, handheld camera thing, just keeping her at a distance. Nothing about what she looks at, not really much from her perspective. We just get this distant reality show style, you know, thing, and I just feel like, man, if we could only just sort of take some time to really sort of see her perspective, and that's all done in the language of the cinema, you know, when you get an over-the-shoulder shot of what she's looking at, that changes how you feel about something so much more immensely, and here she feels like she's in a reality show, and it's hard to feel close to someone who's in a reality show. It's all in the blocking and how you shoot it and reaction shots, that changes immensely how you feel about a character. It's how you position the audience's bias and the audience's love and the audience's distrust. And I don't think I think he could have done a better job at making us feel closer to Justine, and it would have made for a much more better and more powerful film.
Maybe if the first half was really more directly from her perspective, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And the first half feels like a reality show.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, it does show a lot of different people's perspectives, and like you said, a lot of it's with that handheld style.
It looked like Auto Motion Plus was on, so it was a soap opera, but
it was shot in digital video, which
yeah.
I think also makes it feel like that too. And there's, I really don't want to do Film Student 101 complaining, but some of the shot reverse shots were incorrect. When she's talking to the kid, when she's talking to the kid about the secret cave, she's on the left side of the screen, he's on the right side of the screen. Then when we cut to the reaction shot back to the kid's on the left side of the screen, she's on the right side of the screen. Is that intentional? Usually you pretend like the audience is switching sides on the 180-degree rule.
So he broke the 180 rule?
Yeah. Why? It's weird though, because then you see basically the kid and Kirsten Dunst changing positions on the screen rather than the camera changing perspective so we can get their reaction shots.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's depression.
Thank you, David. It all makes sense now.
Just sometimes your shots don't line up.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how that's intentional. I don't know why. It's weird. It's strange. And I didn't even have my filmmaker's goggles on. I just knew I felt weird. It's like, what is it? What's going on? Why am I feeling weird now? Why do I not feel like there's a sense of oh, he keeps moving the camera on the other side.
Why are my pants off?
He keeps moving the camera to the other side of them rather than changing positions within the 180-degree rule.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Again, I liked it more than Zentropa. And I liked Zentropa a lot. I think this is better than Zentropa. I think it's a superior film. And I like that he got his hands on a much bigger budget this time. This is like, I don't know what the budget is, but it's obviously it's high budget for a Lars von Trier film.
And I think Zentropa was supposed to look expensive too, but there's so many like artificial things in it. It kind of keeps it from looking expensive.
Mm-hmm. I think perhaps the really, 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 really good Lars von Trier film is coming. It's not Melancholia, but that really, really, really good one. It's coming around.
He's never going to allow that to happen.
He will never make a good movie.
No, I mean, thinking about it that way, I think that he constantly distances himself from his own stuff. I think he constantly intentionally puts things in there to kind of irritate people.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's distanced himself from this one the most because it got some good press. So I think he really hates it.
He's not like Lynch, because Lynch is totally on board with everything he does with his movie. He's totally... Yeah. He's proud of every second of...
Well, Lynch makes personal movies too, but not in a similar way. He kind of wants to go on a trip.
Yeah, he wants to take you on a surrealist journey, and he wants you to come along, and he's a happy, smiling... meditating man.
But you're kind of subjected more to Lars von Trier movies.
Yeah. Yeah,
you don't go on a trip. Yeah. It's kind of like,
Yeah, your eyelids are held open.
Yeah. This is going to happen to you.
Thanks for listening to the Snobcast. Please send feedback to the snobcastfeedback@gmail.com. Check out our Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts, username The Snobcast.